Now, what is the implication of this to political philosophy? Huge. Okay? In the Republic, which many thinkers would say, or many Plato scholars, I should say, would say that it's a book of ethics. Some would say it's a book of politics. But the usual way of reading it is that it's a book of politics. Okay? Plato starts by the question of justice, and then he and his interlocutors, particularly the main interlocutor, whose name is Plato, they say, okay, let's define justice. So Socrates, Plato usually speaks to Socrates, I'm sure you know that. Okay, Socrates suggests starting with the lower level. Let's start with the micro level and then go to the general level. So what is the micro level? The micro level is the human being. And then let's go to the city. In order to define what justice, let us first discover who is just, okay, on an individual basis, and then talk about the city. And then in order to do that, they wanted to understand how the human being is structured. So Plato says, we have what is known now as a tripartite division of the soul. We have the appetitive soul, the spirited soul, our desires, and we have the rational soul. And he claimed that in order to be a good, just human being, your rational soul, of course I'm skipping so many details, have to master the material parts of yourself, which is your appetites and your desires. Your desires have to be moved by your reason. Okay? So you're hungry, for instance. You can either follow your appetite and go eat a horrible cheeseburger with 1,000 calories, or you can go and eat a salad when you think rationally, because you are thinking in terms of the nutritional value to your body. Okay? A very stupid example, but this is essentially something along the lines of where he's going. Okay? So and then he goes in book 5 and 6 and he says, okay, we said how you can be a just person, how you can do justice to yourself. So it seems that human being who does justice to her or himself should be the leader of the society. Who would be that? He would be the philosopher. Not philosophy, of course, when he says philosopher, he doesn't mean philosopher in the sense of the people who work in philosophy departments now. Okay? But he means the one who thinks rationally. Okay? Who thinks rationally and lives in accordance with reason. Okay? And he says that person will be best capable of leading the society, hence the famous theory of the philosopher-king. We're going to get to sovereignty in a second. So the sovereign, the one who qualifies as a sovereign of the city, should be the philosopher, because it is this person who is not concerned with his own or hers material pleasure, okay, but he's concerned with the universal concepts and theories that govern the human society. He will be concerned with the bigger issues that is universal to everyone. He will not be specific and particular. Okay, he will not be biased by his own narrow view. Okay? So far, so good. Everything looks wonderful. And then he goes into a long tangent about how we should deny private property. And Marx, of course, was very fond of that when he read it. All of that long story, but this is not because he thinks that it's, again, he wants to universalize, right? Okay, if you have specific property, would be biased. If you have he even said children should be taken from their mothers and they should be communal property. Because you love your child, you want your child to be better than the child of your neighbor. So you are going to compete, and that to Plato will divide the society. Anything that is differential for Plato, which is actually, if you think about it in contemporary postmodern terms, it is the exact opposite. Now postmodernity is always talking about difference. Material difference between society, identity politics, okay, community, okay. Plato is the exact opposite. He wants to overcome all of these differences and think in a universal way. Okay, so far so good. Then comes the crisis. Book 6 and 7. Okay, he realizes that in order to breed such a human being, such an amazing philosopher, okay, that philosopher would actually be an atheist. Because he would be completely dissociated from the reality of life, from the material experience in life, from the context and the issues that are of concern to what he called the bronze layer, who are now the elite. They are the golden layer, they are the craftsmen, the businessmen. in corporate America and corporate Canada. Okay, the elite are the businessmen. For Plato, they were the lowest level, but that was an old gone age. Anyway, but so he thought essentially that guy will not be able to relate to the people. And he gives a beautiful imagery in book 6. He calls it the image of the captain. And I'm talking about, of course, the navigation systems 2,500 years ago. Okay, so they didn't have satellites or anything, and what did they use to do? The stars. And he says the captain would always be focused on the stars, okay, in the sky in order to navigate through the sea. And as he or she are meditating the stars, they would stumble and falter. So the people would laugh, the crew would laugh at him, and they would think that she or he is an idiot. Okay, so in other words, he was trying to show or reflect the image of the crisis of having a society run by a human being or having a sovereign, let's talk in the language that I chose for the lecture, the problem of sovereignty. Having a sovereign who's only concerned about the rational issues. And he doesn't resolve the problem. Okay, he just continues. He goes in book 7 and gives a famous cave allegory. I encourage you all to Google it on YouTube or watch it on YouTube. There are very nice cartoons of it. That societies are always living in the dark cave, looking at images, okay? And there are some bloody bastards in the back walking with the objects on whose images are cast by light on that screen. Of course, I always tell my students at Syracuse, who are these people you think who are carrying those objects? Maybe politicians, maybe media, okay? Because those people change with the changes in society, right? And then suddenly, intelligent young man or woman breaks free, okay, and they walk out and they discover, just like they discover in knowledge, how you have to abstract, they discover that the light comes from reason. And in the cave, they discover the sun, the origin of light, which is an imagery for reason in Plato. But Plato left the problem undone. He left the problem without really responding to the question. And but he did something that is very, very brilliant, and I think the real import of the Republic, which I think is the greatest work in political philosophy in human history, period. Okay. The real import of the Republic comes in book 8 and 9 of the Republic, and there he uses the word that has the name of the life, which is Politeia. And Politeia has 2 translations. And its 2 translations reflect the problematic relation between the transcendence of reason and the material richness of social and cultural reality of the society. And that is that Politeia on one hand means, oh my God, this is me. Sorry. My phone is actually hacked. So the Politeia on one hand means the system of governance, which is actually how we understand it nowadays. Okay, but on the other hand, it has another very brilliant meaning. It means the constitution of the political subject who's a member of that society. Let me give you an example. Plato, of course, after he gives you that very beautiful picture of the perfect state, which is run by the philosopher, he expects that it will never last, even if it exists, assuming it can ever exist, and it will degenerate. And he talks about the levels or degrees of generation in terms of levels of relapsing into materialism. Remember, this is the guy of abstraction. The more you abstract, the more you build knowledge, the more the society becomes rational, the happier we will be. Okay, that's his theory. So we move first from being concerned about the truth to being concerned about honor, which makes sense because honor is sort of knowledge, knowledge plus 2. You know, like it has a material significance in reality. You know what I mean? And then you go from knowledge to oligarchy, which is essentially the societies we are living in right now, where power and money is the principle. And then he gets to what we are all crazy about nowadays, democracy. And to him, it is the lousiest possible system before tyranny. He hates democracy. Okay? And he says something that I find truly amazing. Okay? And I was just talking with a colleague here at UTF last year when I was a fellow, we were thinking actually of writing a paper about that, because the Trump phenomenon is exactly, it's like Plato 2,500 years ago, okay, sitting in his crazy white gown in the middle of nowhere it happens, okay, was seeing in a crystal ball what's going to happen, okay. He says the following, he says that the democratic constitution, look at the relation between the two things, okay. So the democratic constitution is a system of governance, the transcendent, responds materially to a human being. What will be that democratic subject? Okay? He says that the democratic subject doesn't believe in any truth beyond her or his own pleasure, or her or his own interest, immediate interest. Now, as you move down that line, okay, and you become completely consumed in your own world, you become a tyrant. He said that leads to the tyranny of the self. Okay? And then he makes two very interesting observations. The first one, he says that self-tyrant, okay, will have two characteristics. First of all, after satisfying her or his basic needs, he wants more. He wants to expand the domain of her or his tyranny. So what will he do? Or she do? Create fantasies. Isn't this what we are doing nowadays? Okay? Sexual fantasies, eating fantasies, booking restaurants, okay? And the sky is the limit, of course. Okay? So all of that stuff, okay, you will always create fantasies. And after the fantasies, okay, you will not be able to accept anyone except a tyrant who creates a fantasy world. Amazing, isn't it? Okay. So we don't have facts, we have alternative facts. The inaugural ceremony was not attended by anyone? No. And the White House speaker goes up in front of the world and in front of the international. It was the most populated inauguration ceremony in American history. Everyone saw it, there was no one there. Okay? No, it is. And then it's alternative facts. Fantasy. Okay, and the willingness, the greatest catastrophe in that context, is the willingness of huge numbers of people in the age of reason to accept that. Okay, which is truly fascinating. It's the prophecy of Plato coming to reality. So to keep things in perspective, Plato understood that there has to be a relationship between the transcendent and the immanent, but his solution or his ideal state doesn't work. The philosopher-king is too good to be true, because he will always be looking at the sky and you will be an idiot. Okay? So what to do? Comes Aristotle very quickly